As we start our May session, we just wanted to do a few other housekeeping tips and announcements. It looks like everybody is still getting connected to the audio, so we should be good. Please remember to keep your mics on mute unless you guys are participating in the discussion or anything. There's a lot of us in here, so it helps to keep the audio clear. Okay, I thought I was muted for a second, left that. Additionally, if you have a camera that you're comfortable turning on, please go ahead and turn those on, so it's always really nice to see your face. And then finally, as our wonderful speaker goes through their presentation today, jot any questions down that you might have so that you can ask once they're finished. We love some good Q&A at the end. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speaker and let them introduce themselves. And I hope everybody has a wonderful session.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I know resume writing is not always the most exciting topics, can be stressful. We're going to make it the least stressful today and show that there can be enjoyment when writing your resume and starting your careers. So who am I? I am Angelica Hernandez-Williams, and I am the Director of Rural Programs for the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits VISTA program. And so our VISTA program is very unique in that we place our members in rural Arizona only. And you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn if you want to connect with me or reach out with any questions you have about resume writing, or we are also hiring for a VISTA leader starting in August. So if you want to continue your career, definitely reach out for that opportunity. I have a background in workforce industry, so I have helped people with writing resumes, both federal and civilian, and helping people with finding jobs. So I feel I'm pretty qualified today to talk about resume writing. Hopefully I can show you that I am. So this year is going to be a little Q&A, a little writing in the chat, share with me, everyone, or just put an emoji up, something so we know here currently has a resume. Okay, that should be like 100% from everybody. I see a lot of hesitation. People are like, Now, for those who do have a resume, who has updated it within the last 6 months? I'm seeing no one is really nodding their head in that response, and that's okay. That's why we're here today. And then bigger question, do you actually need a resume? That should also, so to help with everyone, all of these questions should have a 100% yes answer from all of you. And here's why. So yes, you need a resume because it is required, even though we've advanced a little bit with technology, right? Oh, we have social media. Everyone does applications online. People still require a resume, right? So we need to make sure we have that. Also, having it updated at least within the last 6 months makes it so much easier when you have to go in and apply for a job. It's also required to build accounts for Indeed, Handshake, right? When we're applying for those jobs, to make it easier to have it on there. And if you're going to be submitted for an award, they tend to require a resume as well. So you're ending your service. That's a lot of times when awards are going to be coming up for either your organizations or for the state. Sometimes those governor's volunteer awards. You don't want to not be able to be submitted because you don't have a resume ready. And someone asks, hey, what about my history? A lot of times too, if you're applying for a grant, the grant administrator has to have a resume. So if you're going to be included on that information, then you want to make sure that you have a resume so you're not left out. So even if you're not looking for a job, you may want to apply for an award, you may want to apply for a grant as your career continues. So keep it updated. Put some time on your calendar and just a day and be like, let me update this really quick so I have it ready to go. And while you're updating your resume, you can also go and update your LinkedIn at the same time so they both stay current. So yes to everyone by the end of this presentation, right? We're all going to have a resume. So the purpose of a resume is truly just to be an introduction of yourself. So don't let it stress you out of like, oh my goodness, I have to do all this information. I have to put all this stuff out there. Keep it simple and just truly think of it as an introduction of yourself. And I chose these two pictures because you see everyone's working in their library setting on their resume together as a team. They're very excited. And then the other one, she's in her interview with her resume, like, hey, yes, thank you so much. It's just a tool to get the employer's attention, literally what the resume is. So you just want to look at the job description, look at the company website, really get some key points put in, because all you're doing is grabbing the employer's attention about you and explaining your experience, your skills, your abilities, why you're a great fit for this position. And then the interview is where you go and secure the job. So you don't want to stress the resume and say, I have to convince them of everything. No, you just want to do enough to get their attention to move forward to the next step. We're not going to go into interviewing today, but that's the key for the resume. Get through the door, right? Give it enough strength so that way they open the door. That's all the resume is. Everyone here is serving as a VISTA member. I've met all your program managers, so everyone is pretty awesome. So talking about yourself, sharing your highlights should be that extraordinary. Don't be afraid to talk about yourself and all the great things you've done and this incredible year of service. So first, we're going to go into a federal resume. Does anyone here have an interest or is curious about going into federal employment? You can put an emoji, you can unmute if you have direct questions. Okay, excellent. I'm seeing some people. So what we're going to do now is transition to my federal resume. Let me try and share my screen here. Has anyone attempted to write a federal resume or even aware that you need a different resume for federal employment? Most are saying no. Wow, and very few are saying yes. This is interesting. Good thing we're here today, so we don't make that mistake. So what the difference is, federal employment, you have to have a direct resume for federal employment. And I love federal resumes. They are 10 times easier than civilian resumes because there tends to not be a page limit, right? Which makes it so much easier to talk about all your successes. It should be a minimum of 5 pages. Now, if you just got out of school and this is your first job, that's fantastic. You're going to have a lot of good things to put down. And so it's okay if it's not a full 5-page resume. But if you have some experience and you've worked a lot of jobs, you can highlight that. Another thing is federal resumes do not care about your gaps in employment. Normally in civilian resumes, you're trying to do a bunch of skills and things so that way you're not showing all those gaps. It's a little different now because of COVID, thankfully. They're going to notice there's gaps, right? They understand that. But that's a huge benefit of what's there. And as you can see, as we're scrolling down, it is listing everything I've done, highlighting awards, leadership, trainings, every full description. So you're able to sit there and be like, what did I do? Boom, this is what I did. The key thing with federal resumes is you have to read the job description, which is on usajobs.gov. That's where you apply for every federal job, and make sure you don't miss anything that they're saying. So here's a header, very similar to civilian resumes. You put your location, you're going to put your contact information, and then you're going to put your citizenship. Most of the jobs on USA Jobs clearly state you have to be a US citizen, right? Or you have to show that you have gotten citizenship ability at some point. Some do allow if you're in the process. So by putting it directly on your resume already, they're not searching for it or they're not questioning, is this something that I need? Then here you can put the position, either the name that you're applying for, or you can put the number of that position that you're. It helps you keep track of your federal resumes, right, as you're applying for different jobs. And it also helps the person who's reviewing it know exactly what position you're applying for. Another benefit of federal jobs is there's going to always guaranteed be a person who's going to review it. That's not always a guarantee in civilian jobs, right? Always going to be an actual human person who's reviewing your federal resume. So that's why you want to put as much information so they're not searching for it and getting confused by that. You can put a very small skills summary based on the skill sets in the position that you identify. And then For every position that you list, you need to include this header. You're going to include the job title that you held, the company that you held it with, the address of that company, who your supervisor was and their contact information, and how many hours you worked for that position and what your salary was, plus your dates. Every single job that you've had needs to have this header that way. And your supervisor may not be with the company anymore, and that's okay. Then you can put that underneath, instead of make contact, say no longer with company. But you need to put something so they're aware. And if you don't have a phone number, you can put an email address, right? Put something so that way they can contact them, because what happens is they do a survey or a questionnaire for every application that you submit for USA Jobs, and they ask that question directly. Can we contact your supervisor? So you want to tell them yes. And then you put it here because it's a summary of what that is. So you see, I have it here listed as well. Now my center resume, as you can tell, is not updated because, as I mentioned, the last job I had was with the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits. So I need to update this. And then when it comes to federal resumes, in the job description, there's going to be a section that states what they are going to evaluate you on. For this one, they said it was going to be on technology, content creation, media communications, organizational awareness, or sometimes they may say it's public affairs and procedures. So read that, because they're going to directly tell you what they're going to evaluate you on. And those we call hats. So then you organize all of your skills, all of your abilities into hats. So that way they all go into that area. So when they're looking for these skill sets, they can say, oh yeah, you do have content creation, and they're showing me how you have that. Oh, you do have multimedia experience. This is proof that you do have that. So it helps organize it and make it a lot easier. And you can list every skill that you've had. You can pull directly from the job description in USA Jobs and paste it into here under which hat it's applicable. So that helps show and highlight a lot of what you've done. And then of course you can add a training section to help further highlight, I've gotten these certifications, I've gotten these skilled backgrounds to help relate to this position. And then because everyone here is an AmeriCorps VISTA member, you have the benefit of adding an additional line onto your header where it states eligible for non-competitive eligibility. And you list the dates from the date of when your service ends for 1 year. So you want to put that 1 year of non-competitive eligibility. And that's to let everyone who's checking that you have extra points, so to speak, to add to your resume to say, hey, I've done some service, so we can move forward. Does anyone have questions on that? Okay, I'm going to go to USA Jobs now. Hopefully. And then we're going to highlight.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
So for the address, I put in the chat as well. But for the address, will we put our site location, or will we put like, so I work with the Arizona Food Bank Network, or will we put that one?
You would put, oh, great question. So it's kind of twofold. So you want to put your home address so where you can receive mail, where you will be interviewing out of, essentially, right? So it's a time zone situation. If you are relocating back home, wherever that home may be, if it's not in Arizona or your home state that you're currently serving in, then you can put that location, because you want to put the location of where the time zone is, so you're interviewing. And also, if you have a friend or a family member in a community where you want to live and serve in, then ask them if you can use their address, right? So that way it's easier for you to say, hey, I am a local candidate, because you were using their address. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I think I'm in a bit of a unique situation since I'm doing the teleservice. So for me, I think I'm a bit confused about what would be best to put for that, for location and site work.
Yeah, I would definitely, for the top header, put your home address into teleserving. So wherever your home office is. for your site, when it asking about your business, you definitely want to put Arizona. So the site that they're headquartered out of.
Cool, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So USA Jobs does have a specific section, ta-da, for Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA members. How exciting. And when you are job searching on their website, there is sections on there so you can highlight what you're looking for. So if you have someone who has a security clearance or not, you can select no security clearance jobs. You can select open to the public. And there's a button where you can select positions for AmeriCorps and Peace Corps members. And that means they're aware of your, right here, non-competitive eligibility, right? So they already know that it's a thing that you have. And this section is telling you, how am I eligible? How do I use it? What do I do with it? And you need, and you do get your certificate of volunteer service on your last day of service. Unfortunately, it does not come earlier. So when applying for jobs, it does make it a little challenging. You want to do it beforehand, but you do receive that on your last day of service. And you can request that if you do not receive that. So there you go. And then I'm going to pull up a job and USA Job so we can evaluate and I can show you things that I was directly talking about. Are there questions on adding that non-competitive eligibility piece to your federal resumes?
It's really a question. Oh, sorry. This isn't really a question, but more of a comment. I just recently applied for a job on USA Jobs and they said like, oh, are you a current member? Can you attach like your current whatever service letter that's on like that we have on my AmeriCorps? So there are some jobs that like, even though you might not have, you know, near the end of your term, you don't have the official, you know, non-competitive eligibility, they'll still like make concessions if you are like, currently a VISTA member. So,
definitely. Which is great that they're having that conversation with you and I like that. And it's because you added to your resume, right? This stuff, that awareness. Thank you for sharing. Is there another question? Okay. So this here is a job on USA Jobs, and it's through the AmeriCorps headquartered website. You're going to see they are very clear on their open and close dates. Very, very clear. So you want to make sure you submit everything before it closes. The great thing about federal jobs, every single federal job is required to list a salary. So that's going to be really helpful with planning for your future. They also are going to list the locations that they have. Sometimes there's more than one location. Sometimes it'll be remote. As you can see, this one is not a remote position, but they do have telework eligibility. Further, there's a section that says this job is open to. You want to make sure it says the public because it's generally going to be the majority of people who are applying. And right here, like I said, there's that link specific for Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA members because they're aware of that non-competitive eligibility option that you have. Then they're listing all the duties, requirements, and this is where you can pull directly from. Oh, have I done any contracting services? Let me see. Have I maintained any property records potentially? Sure. And yeah, maybe you haven't done any direct work with NCCC, but you have done it with VISTA, right? The CNCS portion of our organization. So yeah, maybe you have helped with utilizing some of our records. So you can include that skill that's been listed. And then these are your conditions of employment. Right here, you must be a US citizen. That's why you add it to your federal resume. It's already asking right there. Telework ready. You can add onto your resume, willing to relocate, willing to telework. So they know that that's not an extra barrier that they're going to have to go through. You can also add have a valid driver's license in that skills section. So they know, yeah, this candidate is filling all of my needs. Qualifications. They're going to tell you what you need to do to be qualified. You need to have knowledge of this area. You need to have some inventory management experience. You need to be able to drive a passenger vehicle. Education, here it says may not be a substitute for experience. Some positions will say that you can substitute a bachelor's or a master's degree in place of whatever their years of experience was requiring. So keep that in mind as well. And then of course, there's always veteran preference. for anyone who is a veteran. You get additional points onto every federal job that you're applying for. So that's a really big help. And then how will you be evaluated? These are the hats that I was talking about. So they want someone who has technical competence and communication. So you're going to add those two hats into those job descriptions, and all those abilities that you have, you want to make sure that you're filling those skills and descriptions that you have into these two hats. You can add more hats, of course, to help with the organization, but you want to make sure these two are listed without any complications. And then they're going to tell you your required documents, right? And all of these need to be uploaded into the portal here for USA Jobs and submitted with the job description before the date closes. They will not come to you and say, hey, you said that you had a bachelor's and you're using education in place of these requirement of 3 years of experience for a job, but we don't have your official resume. I mean, your official transcript uploaded, so you're not qualified for the position. They're not going to wait and come back to you and say, hey, we don't have this document. It is your responsibility to upload it prior to the close date of this job. So you want to make sure you're fully reading and not leaving anything out. And then how to apply. This link right here is included in every single job for USA Jobs, and it's the questionnaire. When you click on that, it tells you the questions they're going to ask you. Do you have an official transcript? Are you using education in place of this? Do you have technical competence? Do you have communication ability? Right? So those are additional questions on how they're going to evaluate your application, so you can make sure that you are answering yes to every single one of those in your resume before you even submit. They're giving, this is what I'm saying, USA Jobs is so incredible. They give you all the tools. They want to hire people. You just have to make sure you're taking the time to read all the steps so you're not missing a point. And then here's what's even better. Every USA Jobs has an actual person who's responsible for the position. Not this, then it's going to be the direct hire human resources site. And this is who you contact if you have questions. You can contact them prior to submitting or after submitting. And another positive thing, every time you submit for USA Jobs, they are required to tell you the status of your application. So in the portal, after submitting, they're going to tell you, oh, it's being reviewed. Everything was submitted. Yes, you were accepted. Yes, you're viewed as qualified. Yes, you're moving forward. No, now you're not moving forward. And you can, at every step in the process, you're allowed to ask why. Hey, you rejected, you sent me an email saying that I'm not qualified for this position. Can you tell me why? Sometimes they tell you initially, and if they don't, you're allowed to ask that question. And when they ask, they're going to tell you, oh, because I didn't see that you had an educational requirement. Oh, but I do, I showed it here in my resume, and here's my transcript again that I've already included. Oh, sorry, we missed that. We'll move you forward. So you can have that conversation with these people and say, hey, why are you saying I'm not qualified? Sometimes they're going to say, oh, we just didn't see this skill set, whatever. And you're going to be like, sorry, I didn't demonstrate that. I will make sure to do that for the next position. Thanks for helping. So you can have, so it's, you're not wondering why, like with some civilian jobs, right? Why didn't I get this job? They're going to tell you why. They're going to help you to move forward in that process. I love it. It's totally easy, fair and transparent hiring process. So that's where it goes down to it. Are there any questions at all about this process? Okay, great.
I got a question.
Yes.
This is Kalani. Hey, how are you?
Good.
So does this apply to all of the positions across the board for through
Jobs, yes,
AmeriCorps?
that's going to be
okay.
Yeah. And then someone in the chat did put a question about being a veteran. And yes, you do want to put that at the top of your resume, right, with AmeriCorps and that non-federal competitive eligibility statement as well. Yes, great question.
So if you don't have, I guess, the credentials as far as educationally, but you have the on-the-job experience, would they take that? Would that be included as training or to meet the educational qualifications?
Only if the position is allowing you to substitute. So here it says that you can't substitute education for this position. Some positions do allow education to be submitted. And when they say education, they mean more formalized, like through a degree from an accredited university. They don't mean necessarily, like if you get a certificate afterwards, yes. But if it's just a training that you've attended to help increase knowledge, that's not the same thing that they're referring to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any additional questions on that?
Yeah, just going back to something you mentioned. So you said if they do reject you, you can email and say like, hey, what's up? And then if it was something that they missed on your resume, you can just say, oh, I actually do have this credential.
Yes.
Is that some, oh, okay. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, the key thing there as well is to remember that you have to have included it. So you can't go after the fact and say, oh yeah, you're right, I didn't have my transcripts. Oh yeah, you're right, I didn't mention that I'm,
Okay, so
like that's a requirement. Let me then tell you about it now. No, it has to show, because you want to then highlight within that document you submitted, hey, this is proof that I do have this. So yes.
okay, so it's more just if it was an oversight on their part. Okay.
Yes. And Jay, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a question? Okay. Now, I hope more people apply for federal employment now that they're aware of this and all the benefits, because I know it's offered to every VISTA, and years with this service, not many people are interested in that federal employment piece. So it's a lot easier than it looks. It just is time consuming. Once you get that template set up, you can adjust it a lot easier for each job you have moving forward. Okay, now we're gonna go to, everyone take a deep breath with me. The civilian resume. Not the funnest part, right? But this, we're here to learn tips and how to do it really well. Okay, let me go back to screen sharing so I can pull up my resume. Ta-da! This one is an updated resume. Check out that title, Rural Development Manager for the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits. Okay, so this one is gonna, same thing as the other one, you're going to have a header. So you have your name, your contact information, and your location. So as the same thing with the federal resume, you put the location of where you want to job search in, essentially. It's a lot easier to change where you're going. So if you have a friend or family member in a community you want to live in and they're willing to house you while you're there until you find a house, put their address, right? You don't put the full address on a civilian resume. You only put the city and state. Another difference, you get to include your LinkedIn. So unlike the federal resume where you get to list all of your information, right? You're relying on your LinkedIn to offer an additional resource to cover up some of that information. Here, you want to do a professional summary, which is a little different than what's been done in the past. Some people put, I like to have this and that. I'm looking for this. This is going to be like what you see in a LinkedIn profile, that header that catches their attention. I have 8 years of experience doing exactly what you're looking for. I'm effective in the areas that you need. So it's a really strong statement directly saying, hey, I am the person you're looking for, right? You want to add key words that you find on the job description, keywords that you see listed throughout the company website, because that is what the person who's reviewing these resumes are looking for, or maybe they're using a system, an automated system to review the resume. So you want to make sure you're getting those keywords highlighted. Then you're going to put a skills section, and you're going to put in your skills section all the key things. If they say that they require education, then you're going to put it up here what that education requirement is. If they're saying that they require you to be a military spouse because you know that you're applying for a job with the USO and they tend to hire military spouses, you're going to put that you're a military spouse. If they are saying that you need specifically Microsoft Office Suite skills, even though it seems like it's a standard now for everyone to have that, you're going to include it because they listed it on that job description as a requirement for this position, right? If they say you need to have budgeting experience, you're not only going to add the skill, you're going to say to how much. Obviously, this needs to be updated. I have a master's now, and I budget for more than that. The federal grant that we run for AmeriCorps is definitely more than that. But yes, and then this here needs to be updated. This was just submitted for an award that we submitted for. They just wanted to know a list of your duties. But when you are filling a application, you want to make sure that it is not just a bullet point list of your job duties. So here it says, I write and I submit proposals to funders or grantors. Whoop-de-doo, everyone does that, right? You want to say how many you write and submit, how much you've received, what is the total amount that you've been awarded for those grants. You need to put quantitative data to back up these statements so they're aware that yes, you can write and submit a proposal for a grant. How successful are you? What is the highlight that you have? So if you go down to here for Arizona at Work, here's an example. I provided direct business services and support for over 200 businesses within the Tri-County area. That statement is a lot stronger worded than I write and submit proposals. Does everyone see that difference? Yes, okay, good. Seeing some head nods. And that can be challenging to do. This is when you get to the point of you're talking about yourself and your highlights, right? And so when it comes to civilian resumes, you definitely want to make sure that you are giving other people the chance to review them because you're limited on the words that you can submit. So you want to make sure you have time and you can go to a site supervisor, or you can go to your program manager, or maybe even a trusted family member and say, hey, is there anything I'm missing? I say your site supervisor first because they're your day-to-day person, so they should have a better idea of what you're doing. And they can say, actually, it's not 200, it's 500 businesses. Or, hey, you forgot to add about how you helped with that fundraising project that we did, and add that you helped raise, $10,000 for our organization. That is something that needs to be highlighted. Every job that you put here needs to have a header as well. As you can see, the header is a lot less than what you put on a federal resume. So you want to include this. It is important to have your supervisor's contact information because the application may require it, but it's not needed here on the resume. I like to go in bold every header because it helps with readability. You want to be consistent on your font throughout your entire resume and consistent on the font size throughout your entire resume. Also, most resumes should be 1 page. If you are having a 2-page resume, you want to make sure it is 2 full pages. If you cannot fill 2 full pages, then you need to find a way to decrease and make it 1 page. You can do that by having your margins set at 1 inches. You can add maybe a thicker header at the top on your second page, but just make sure that it is a full 2 pages if you have that. If you have a second page, you want to have some kind of header up here to highlight. I did my name and my phone number, so it's easy to know that they're attached. You can do your name and you can do a page number. Or if you need 2 full pages, you can repeat that full header that you have from that first page. You want to make sure you have that so they know the documents are tied together. And you want to add your volunteer experience, awards that you've received, and your education and training. So that way you can highlight that as part of that. And you can choose sometimes some volunteer experience based on what the job is. So if you have a ton of volunteer experience, you can say, hey, I've done this direct thing, let me add it to my resume because it's what's really important. What's also really key is to have it organized, right? Because it makes the readability of it so much easier. For bullet points, you want to make sure that it's pretty even. So if you're going to do 3 to 4, then make sure you're putting 3 to 4 on every single position that you list on your resume. Also, if your current job can have a little bit more, the current position that you're in, but try to make sure that they're even throughout. Symmetry is really key when writing a resume. See how the readability of it is super easy. It flows. You see here, even on the skill section, that it's matching on how many skills are listed for each side. So that way you know what's going through. The key thing too, when you're writing your bullet points, is you do not want to use I statements and you do not want to use paragraphs. So you're not going to put a paragraph of all the skills and stuff you have to be able to separate it out. You also do not use I statements. Say, I write grants. I assist with hiring new people. They have to be actionable statements. I assisted, right? You put assisted, right, responsible for, aided in. Make sure they're really strong action statements. Because by putting I, it makes it sound not as strong of a statement. And also this is not an elevator speech that they're reading. They want to get to the point. The difference with civilian resumes is if it's someone who's using a system to review it, they're looking for those keywords, right? If it's an actual person, they're going through so many resumes that when they say it seconds to review, you have seconds. So the easier it is for them to read and say, do they have the skill? Oh yeah, I can go to the skill section here and see if it's included. They mentioned their work experience, cultivate, develop this. Yeah, okay, yeah. They may have what I'm looking for. So it helps the person reviewing your resume to make it that much easier. And you definitely want to make sure you give someone else time to review it to make sure you're not letting anything forgotten. Does anyone have questions specific to the civilian resume?
There were some questions in the chat, but it looks like between Kate and Mike, they were able to address them.
Okay. So the question on how do you tailor it to your position, great question. That's what we're going to do now. So how you tailor it to the position, what you're reading, is you can change your job title. So if someone is saying they are hiring for a public affairs associate and your title is public relations manager, right? Change the title. Say, yeah, I'm actually am a current public relations manager associate, you know, that they're related. You can change the job title, or you can do / and then add that additional stuff so that way you can show directly that you are related to that field and you have experience in the job title that they're hiring for. That's one way to adjust it. Also, when it comes down here, when they're saying, for example, I had put that I have relation with 200 businesses, and they may not want information with 200 businesses. They may say, oh yeah, we're an association, a membership-based organization. Do you have experience with managing members? So the organization I was with maybe wasn't membership-based, but it was important to retain those businesses that I worked with to make sure we are continually meeting their hiring needs. So I may change the word businesses to members, right? And when they have that conversation in the interview, just say they weren't paying members, but we worked with them the same way you do with memberships on retaining them, making sure their needs are met, making sure that we are assisting them with all of the services that we offer. So it's keywords like that on how you go with adjusting, right? Say, I have all these great skills and all these abilities. How do I tell them that, yes, I've done this job because I'm not using the same words they are? So get a thesaurus.
Hey, Paul.
Yes?
Hey, Paul.
Oh, that's good. I think she said that's awesome. So that's a really key way on changing that wording to help. Now we're going to look at a civilian job so we can kind of get an idea of what they're looking for and how to highlight some of those skills. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, perfect. So this job here is a full-time early college coordinator at our local community college here in Sierra Vista, Cochise College. And so here is the position summary. This is on Indeed, by the way. So if I had gone to Coaches College website directly, they may have had a larger job description. So that's something to keep in mind when you're applying through Indeed, is that go directly to the company's website as well and see if they have the job listed there, because sometimes they're going to give more detail on what's required. Here are the duties and responsibilities. So you want to say it's supported all aspects of dual enrollment program. So I do help with enrolling in my current position with enrolling members into the VISTA program, right? So I could say I help with the enrollment program, all aspects of it. And they're going to say, oh, what's the program that you work on enrolling people in? It's the AmeriCorps VISTA program. Let me tell you all about it, right? You conduct mandatory advising. Every VISTA member is required to take an on-site orientation, so they have familiarity, right? And throughout your year of service, you're going to help them with the VAD that they're working on. So yeah, I do conduct mandatory advising, right? And you can add to that and say, I conduct mandatory advising with the VISTA assignment description and an orientation process. That's how I fulfill that duty. Do I provide supportive services? Yes, hello, you're a VISTA member. We are here to advocate for you with your site supervisors to make sure you are not being overused, doing any direct service of any kind. And we want to make sure that you're getting all your benefits like SNAP and your local state healthcare services. So yeah, I do provide supportive services to all of my VISTA members. You see how I'm doing that? You just take each little piece that they have and say, can I fit that? How do I fit that? So I can write it on my resume. Any questions about that process? Okay, now I'm going to send you to a secret site that some may know about. A lot of people shockingly don't know about this site. And this is extremely helpful. And this is used throughout my entire career to write awesome resumes. It's called ONET Online. So if you just want to Google ONET, when it comes up, you'll get right to it. And here you can put occupation key search. So if we're looking for human resources, and it gives you positions, so we're going to look for human resources specialist. It's going to tell you the tasks, the skills required for this position, and the detailed work activity. So if you're struggling to say, what do I do in my job? How do I expand what my positions are? You can pull directly from these tasks right here. I hire employees and process highly related paperwork. That's now a skill you can add directly to your resume. And then remember, you beef it up by saying, I hire 30 employees and process daily highly related paperwork for each employee that we've onboarded, right? So this is helping you with developing that information out. Or when you're job searching and maybe they don't have all the information listed, you can say, well, what does this job do? It's going to say what skills are needed, right? So you can say, oh, I do have familiarity with Adobe. Oh my goodness, I am really good with Blackboard, right? Which is really common for educational institutions. And you can add that now onto your resume, even though it may not be listed on the job description. You're aware that this is a skill that's commonly used in that position. So let me list it on my resume so I can be that additional standout candidate. And it continues going down with a bunch of stuff. So it gives you all those things that you can highlight and take and then expand as needed. So make sure you're using this tool as well. Any questions at all? Let me check the chat, I guess, to make sure we're answering as much as we can. People want to know, let me give you the site. It's ONET. Let me put it in the chat. Yes, Jay.
Angelica? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I noticed that you did with the, with as far as federal jobs, you mentioned that the resumes are somewhat different. is that also the case for the interviews with federal jobs? Are interviews more standardized or a little different than a civilian interview?
Yeah, so it can vary. One thing that's trending really huge right now in interviews that hasn't been in the past is more panel style interviews. And that's definitely picked up a lot with virtual interviews being the case. For federal jobs, it is a hit and miss. They tend to still not favor virtual interviews. So they want to make sure if this is not a remote position, if you can't telework and you got to be located in the community, how do we interview you? They tend to be a little bit more flexible when it comes to saying, hey, I'm moving to that community, then they get it, right? Okay, we'll interview you, because they're aware that it's a lot of military spouses who are using the system and they need time to get to that community. But I would say that it's the same information. They're going to go through and highlight your resume. What is happening here? Just be aware that it's going to be more people than one person in that room or on that video on answering those questions. And they're doing a lot more situational questioning. Like, here's the situation. What would you do? Or if this were to happen, what would you do? And it kind of makes you think of on the job processes, right? Which can be challenging because you're like, well, I've not had this job. I don't know. But think about what you would do in that position or how you would go about doing that. There are some great articles out there on how to handle situational interviewing. So you could look into those. Maybe at some point we could add something on interviewing. That's not something we thought was going to be a topic of true interest here, but it does relate to the resume, right? Once you get through that door, because now everyone has this awesome resume that we've just created, what next, right? How do I continue in that process to get the job? So we definitely understand that. So for sample resumes, I can send you mine that I have, and then there's a template I can send out so everyone can utilize that. Jay, did that answer your question? I'm so sorry for jumping.
Yes. Thanks, Angelica. Yes, it did.
Okay, perfect. So I'll make sure that before Georgia sends out the link for today that we get those sample resumes sent out. Mike, you had asked that question about tailoring your resume. Was I able to answer that question?
Oh, I don't think I asked that question. I think it was somebody else. I was just like responding.
Someone
That's
else
what
asked?
yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, someone asked, how do you fit 2 pages of experience when you have lots of experience onto 2-page resume? Excellent question. You should not put on any experience that is more than 5 years back, because the way that technology keeps changing, because the way that society is growing. Yes, you may have these skills and sometimes they don't expire because you're like, but I have them, they're really great. The person reviewing your application, unfortunately, is not interested in something that you had directly out of college in the 80s, because they don't see it. They're unaware of, has she actually used this experience or not? Or maybe she did it then, but it's since been updated. Does she have the current system knowledge that's there? So it's hard. I've worked with people and they have amazing experience. And how do you add that, right, without showing gaps and showing that I'm unqualified for this position? For that situation, you can, what I demonstrated was a chronological resume. You could maybe do a functional resume, which is highlighting of your skills. So you would do like what they have in the federal resume, you would do hats and say, these are the areas that I qualify. This is where all my skills came from to fit these needs. And then you would list your experience and not include any descriptions underneath those jobs, because it would be like a whole section on itself. And that's one way to include a lot of experience into 2 pages. And I can definitely include a sample of a functional resume if that would be helpful when we send out those templates as well. Generally, most people want that chronological resume. So don't be thinking, oh, I need to change how I write my resume. But that's just for someone who has a lot of experience in how to demonstrate that. So someone asked why you would put an Army battery spouse as a skill and not in the summary section. You're right, it's not a direct skill. That is a section just to highlight. You can change the word from key skills to qualifications. You can change it to say applicable related experiences, something else. If key skills doesn't seem like it's a bit, you don't add it into the summary section, because unless the position is directly requiring that type of skill, it's not something that's important. Sometimes you add it because it's showing, hey, this is another benefit that I have, because that summary section is supposed to be sentences, right? And they're not I sentences. So you can't say I am an Army spouse, right? That doesn't really help highlight anything, but just putting it really quickly lets people know, hey, they do have experience in this area. So yeah, maybe they can relate to the clientele that we're working with. So that's why it's added to the skill section, because it shows that you're relatable to potential clients that could be coming into that position. And correct, and Kate was correct to that question. It does depend on the organization that you're applying to. If it's veteran specific, then you definitely want to make sure that you're highlighting all of your veteran related services and work. Andrew, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, can you clarify what you're talking about, the 5-year rule?
Yes, so you don't want to put any experience onto your resume that is 5 years or more. 10 years if is the max that you want to go back. So that's why we say 5 years, because it helps with keeping it into a 2-page resume. But you definitely want to put nothing that is 10 years or more. If you've worked in a position, like some people here, right, are going to be veterans, they've worked their full year, they've retired 20 years later, and then they've had 2 jobs since, right? So you can add that you were a veteran and you've had that experience because you've retired from that position. And other people who have retired from a position, you can add that, because it, especially if you stayed in one position for a very long time, it's going to show loyalty in that role. So that's something to highlight. But the reason why you don't want to put experience in a job, or and it's for writing your job experiences, you can put education that's longer than 10 years back. You just don't want to put the dates. You can put skills, trainings you've attended that are longer than 10 years back, but don't include the dates. This is just specific to your jobs that you've held. You don't want to list any jobs that are more than 10 years old.
So what if you've only held one job in that 5-year, 10-year time frame? You just list one job under work experience?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome. And Georgia shared a great point, is it 10 to 15 years of experience on your resume. So it does vary for your preference. It's just in the industry that I've been in here that we'd say no more than 10 years, because you don't want to get into a very long resume. And so it helps people with putting the highlights. Okay, if there are no additional questions, then we can let you all head out to your next appointments, meetings, your tasks. This was great. Thank you all for the conversation. I hope we're all more confident in resume writing now. You don't feel overwhelmed. You can see that it's completely doable. It just takes time to sit and read through the job description.